Make amends. Make sure. Well, if we get everybody sit down, it is time to start. Good to see everybody out this morning. Why don't you bow and we'll have a word of prayer to get started. Heavenly Father, we're thankful for the day, for the beauty of your creation. We thank you for the opportunity that we have to come this morning to study from your word and learn more about your will for us and the things that go on in our lives. Be with us through this class. Be with us always. Help us to look to you for our guidance and care. In Christ's name, amen. Okay, just to let you know how things go. This class is not going to be a lecture class. It requires participation from all of you. There's going to be questions. We'll discuss the question, then we'll go to the scriptures to back up that question. So I want everybody to participate. Everybody has a chance to voice opinions of the ladies that we're going to be studying about. And Terry asked me this morning, said, where are we starting? I said, it's a surprise. And then I stopped on the way down and asked us, where do you think we'll start? Genesis 1. Eve. So that's the ground rules. We want participation. We'll try to, if we don't get through everything because of participation, that's fine. We're here to study. And like I say, this quarter is going to be the women of the Bible. So women, I expect y'all to participate. You're talking about your kind. So just get started off. Have you ever wondered why Eve was called Eve? Has that thought ever entered your mind? Anybody got any? That's the part where, you answer back.
Because it was in the evening when she was presented to Adam.
Yeah.
It's better not saying it.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. I hope you can answer it yourself because we don't know. We'll find out who named her a little later on in the lesson. Yeah, go ahead and turn over to Genesis. We'll be chapter 2 and chapter 3, and then we'll be going over some Ephesians and Matthew, and so we'll be jumping around. But I hope someone will volunteer to read once in a while the scriptures that we look at. So, how does Eve differ from all other women? How does Eve differ from all other women? Do what? She wasn't born, okay. She was full grown. What else?
First woman.
Huh?
She was the first woman.
The first woman, okay.
She knew God.
She talked to God.
She was the mother of all.
Mother of all peoples. How else?
She's the first one to sin.
First one to sin. Okay. How did Eve come about?
One of Adam's ribs.
Do what?
One of Adam's ribs was taken out, and God formed her from that rib.
Okay. She was created from Adam. God
She
put,
bore the first human.
do what?
She bore the first human that was going to be in the earth, all mankind. So I think that's her most unique aspect right there,
Okay.
other than eating them apples.
How do you know it was an apple?
Well, my grandfather said it was.
Your grandfather said it was. Yeah, we don't know what it was. It just was a fruit. Turn over to Genesis chapter 2. Let's look at verse 21 and 22. And Jehovah God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which Jehovah God had taken from the man made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. So, like some have said, she was never born as children are born, but she was created by God out of a side of one of Adam's ribs. So then that brings up the next question. Why was Eve created?
To make a helpmate for Adam.
Okay, to make a helpmate. Is that it? Is that the only reason?
God said it wasn't good for man to be alone.
Okay, not good for man to be alone.
That's still true. You leave us alone to get in trouble.
So, what is a helpmeet?
What is what?
A helpmeet.
An ideal companion.
Companion, okay. What else?
Suitable.
Suitable,
Suitable, basically.
okay. What's their job of a helpmeet?
Do the thing you don't want to do.
Ronnie, that's not the right attitude.
That's the one I thought of.
Do you hear those boos, Ronnie?
To help
Things together, I think they do things together.
do things together.
It's easier to do something when you have a partner than it is do it by yourself. Whatever that is, one can pick up the shovel and one can shovel, whatever. It's just easier with someone else.
You don't like that, do you, Betty? Pick up that shovel.
Now, each one of us has strong points,
Yep.
and the one is to fulfill the area that you're weak in or help you with that area. And sometimes it just helps to have someone you can talk to, trust.
Okay. Anybody else? Look at Genesis chapter 2, verse 20. And the man gave names to all cattle, and to the birds of the heavens, and to every beast of the field. But for man there was not found a helpmeet for him. As has been said, it's not good for man to be alone. And here, God gave Adam the responsibility to name all the animals on the earth. And so he did. But then God also saw that he was by himself. He had no one to help him. As has been said, it's, a man and a woman together as husband and wife, it's a combination relationship. You both work together, do things together.
I wonder if the helpmate is equal.
Yes, to a certain extent. And we'll see that later, that she is to be under the man as far as who's in charge of the house and things of that nature. But she also is not a slave to the husband. So it's a real fine line that you walk, but it's a line that God set forth and that you can do and work together. But one has to be the, in anything, one has to be the head and the other follows. As Christ is the head of the church and we follow him. So the man is to be the head and the woman follows. Dan?
You need to realize that equality does not equal sameness. I'm the equal of the President of the United States, but I don't have free access to the White House, and I don't want him preaching from this pulpit.
That's for sure.
Equality doesn't mean we're the same.
Right.
Different responsibilities are incurred in different ways.
That's right.
In this translation, it doesn't have help meet like it's one word. It's help meet for him, which might mean help suitable for him. I mean, he probably had oxen that could pull rocks around or something like that, but he didn't have a helper that was suitable to
Right.
help him with.
Yeah. And it's in life today. The wife is to help her husband. And like we said, most women grow up knowing how to cook. Some, huh? They used to, yeah. Luckily for Dan, Dolores knows how to cook. But, some men grow up knowing how to cook, how to do laundry, how to clean a house.
So my son's all around.
Yep. But basically, it's always been back in those days, the woman did all of that. Because the man was usually out working in the fields. Some areas, women still worked in the fields back then also. But they still had other responsibilities at home. Who was Eve given as a wife? Who was Eve given to as a wife? Adam. We've already read that verse there in Genesis 2 and 22. She was given to Adam, the first man. What position was she to have in the relationship? What position did she have in her relationship with Adam? Huh? Okay. Anybody else have a thought on that?
Well, the man was supposed to be a head, so she would be, the man's the head of the household, so she's the
Okay.
second priority kind of to the household.
Be turning over to 1 Corinthians chapter 11. First Corinthians chapter 11. Let's look at verse 3. But I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God. Then Ephesians chapter 5, verse 22. Wives, be in subjection unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. So, what was her position?
She was
She's under subjection to her husband. But look, like say Ephesians 5:22, what does that really tell you? The last part of that verse, what does that tell you? As to the Lord. So, just what does that mean?
It means what it says in verse 25. Husband loves your wife even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it.
Okay. What if you're a wife and you're a member of the church, but your husband is not? And he tells you not to go to church. What do? You go to church. You're under subjection to your husband, but if it contradicts God's law, then you don't follow him. You follow God's law. Just like man, even though we're over the wife as the head of the house, we still follow God's law and not, put her into slavery, so to speak.
But the Christian lady is still bound to the unbelieving husband.
Yes. Yep. I'm sure people have known, and growing up, of men and women that were married, but one was a member of the church and the other wasn't. But because of the life that the believer led, the non-believer eventually became a member of the church. So you still have to, follow God's law in what you're doing and how you live in your life. What did Jesus say about this union? What was Jesus' thoughts on the union of husband and wife?
I believe he said that it was honorable for one thing.
Okay.
Did he say something else?
Turn over to Matthew chapter 19. Matthew chapter 19. We're going to read verses 3 through 9 and see what Jesus says. And there came unto him Pharisees, trying him and saying, Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? And he answered and said, Have ye not read that he who made them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh, so that they are no more two, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. They say unto him, Why then did Moses command to give a bill of divorcement, and to put her away? He saith unto them, Moses, for your hardness of heart, suffered you to put away your wives, but from the beginning it hath not been so. And I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife except for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. And he that marrieth her when she is put away committeth adultery. So what did Christ have to say about the relationship between husband and wife? It's forever. It's for life. Go ahead.
Are you going to talk about 1 Corinthians 7?
Do what?
Are you going to talk about 1 Corinthians 7?
What does it say?
Where it talks about that if you have a believing spouse and a non-believing spouse. In verse 11 it says, But if she, I don't know the word, and but unto the man I command, yet not I, but the Lord, let not the wife depart from her husband, but if she depart, let her remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband, and let not the husband put away his wife. But to the rest speak, I, not the Lord, if any brother hath a wife that believeth not, and she be pleased to dwell with him, let him not put her away. Verse 13, And the woman which hath a husband that believeth not, and if he be pleased to dwell with her, let them not leave him. Okay, so they can stay together, like you said, if one's a Christian, one's not. 14, if the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. So you can help, they can help each other become Christ-like.
Right.
And then it goes on to say, else your children, else were your children unclean, but they are not holy. But if the unbelieving depart, let them depart. If a brother or a sister is under bondage in such cases, is not under bondage in such cases, but God hath called us to peace. It doesn't say they can remarry, but they say they can depart from each other.
Right. But you don't remarry.
But it doesn't say one way or the other. It just says they can depart. And these verses.
Well, if you, like say there in Matthew 19, it talks about being together for life, but it also brings up the point that as a married couple, you're one. Because you're joined together. You become one. You're not two, you're two separate individuals, but it's a relationship of being working together on equal terms and not being master over slave. So it's, it's something we need to look at. Of course, in today's world, you don't follow anything except what I want. I'm going to do what I want no matter what. I don't like you anymore, so get out of my house. That's not the way it was set up from the beginning. Adam and Eve were made together and they were one. So what home was prepared for Eve? What home was prepared for Eve? Okay, turn back to Genesis chapter 2, verses 8 through 9. And Jehovah God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. And now the ground made Jehovah God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So God created the Garden of Eden. That's where he put Adam. And that's where Adam named all the animals of the earth. And that's where Eve was formed from Adam. And so you might say that her home was the Garden of Eden. They had everything. All the creatures on this earth, whether you like crawly creatures like snakes, that's all right. They were still there. They were around. They were around all the animals that were created. Didn't have any fear for their life or anything of that nature. It was a perfect place to be, up to a point. And that's what we're going to be looking at here. I think we just described everything that was in the garden. God had all the trees, all the fruit that was good to eat. If you notice, it doesn't say anything about eating animals or anything. It's pretty much vegetarian lifestyle. But the creation was beautiful. We have a good creation that we live in now. Man has kind of helped destroy it a little bit, but it's still a beautiful creation that we live in to enjoy. And God made it for us. So what were Eve's duties? What was Eve's duties?
Dressing and keeping the garden.
Dressing and keeping the garden. Yeah, look in Genesis chapter 2, verses 15 and verse 20. And Jehovah God took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. And then in verse 20, and the man gave names to all cattle, and to the birds of the heavens, and to every beast of the field. But for man there was not found a helpmeet for him. So her duties when she was created was to help Adam in the garden, to keep it dressed, to keep it looking nice, like it was created. What was her wardrobe? Did she have fancy dresses and high heels and makeup to put on and mirrors to look in to make sure every hair was in place?
She had her hair.
She had her hair. How long was it?
That was made for a covering, whatever that meant.
Perfect length, whatever that is.
Yeah, look in Genesis, what was that? Chapter 2, verse 25. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. Why were they not ashamed? Didn't know any different. That's the way they were made. Do what?
No sin, nothing to be ashamed
Yep. Nothing to be ashamed of. You just have to be careful around all the rose bushes with thorns.
There were no thorns in the garden.
Oh.
That brings up an interesting question. It said God put them in the garden, or put them in there to dress the garden, but there wasn't any thorns, there wasn't any briars, there wasn't any weeds. What were they?
I guess picking up limbs that fell off. But it also doesn't say that they started fires either, so, you know. They just keep it looking nice, I guess.
Paul, back there in 23, though, they had no reason to be ashamed, because Adam said, bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. And they recognized that right off. So why be ashamed of yourself when you're, just because you're naked doesn't mean.
Yep.
We instituted that, I think.
Yeah. What was Eve tempted? Huh?
The fruit of the tree of knowledge.
Yeah, look at Genesis chapter 3, 1 through 6. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which Jehovah God had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of any tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, Of the fruit of the trees of the garden we may eat, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die, for God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as God, knowing God, good and evil. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and she gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. So, you're living in a beautiful garden, no worries, nothing bothering you, and then someone comes along and asks you a question, and you fall into that idea, well, maybe it is all right for us to eat that one, even though God had told us not to. Do we see that today in our world today? We're told not to do certain things, but someone comes along and say, oh, that's not going to hurt you. Let's go ahead and do that. Take that little pill, it's all right. It just may rob you of your mind, but that's okay, you know. You don't need your mind anyway, because now you're gonna do whatever you wanna do. Dan?
I've got a fairly lengthy comment right here. Do you mind?
No, go ahead.
Her problem started when she misquoted God's word. God said don't eat from it, and she said not eat from it or touch it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what got her in trouble. And I think her problem was what most of ours is. She didn't immediately sin, I don't believe. I think she did what all the rest of us would do. We inch our ways into sinning and finally get into it. I think she saw that fruit on that tree, and she would look at it, and maybe a day later she'd come back and she'd get a little bit closer and look a little bit closer, and maybe finally one day she gets to the point that she just touches it and nothing happened. And that's when she decided that God was not right. He said not eat from it or touch it or you die, and I'm still alive. So if I can touch it and live, I can eat it and live.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when she ate it.
And found out it was pretty good. It was tasty. Of course, she didn't understand God said you'll die. She didn't understand that term of death. But it's not like you touch it or eat it, you're going to just fall dead immediately. It's that your life is going to change and you will die.
Do you think at this point, when this happened, that Adam had already named all the animals on earth?
Yeah. Because it said he already had.
One of those.
Huh?
So the serpent
Yeah.
was one of those, but it was more subtle, whatever that word means.
Subtle.
What it means, then God changed the serpent to where it crawled on the ground for the rest of its days.
Yeah. We'll see that here in just a minute.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
I also think, she ate it. It says that Adam was there with her. I kind of have a feeling that Adam was sitting there watching this, and he didn't say anything. So he's part of it. You always say about Eve. She might have taken it first, but he sure did. He heard the same thing. So, I mean, I think it's, sin is impugned to Adam. So he's right there as part of this. Not like, she's tricked him or anything. Sounds to me like he might have even just witnessed that going on.
He could have been witness there.
It says in the New Testament that Eve was deceived of the devil. Adam wasn't deceived. He knew exactly what was going to happen because she gave it to him and he ate it. He wasn't deceived at all. Nobody had to coax him into doing it other than his helpmate.
Well, she'd been browbeating him all these years, so.
Well, did Eve know what death was?
Do what?
Did Eve know what death really was?
No.
So
No.
When they say you're surely going to die, did she know what that meant?
Yeah. No, she didn't understand it. Because like I say, up until that point, there was living forever,
One other thing was that God allowed that serpent to tempt her.
You know, because God doesn't tempt us.
No, we don't, but we
But
know that it wasn't the serpent doing it on his own. So who did cause him to tempt Eve? Satan was already there.
Oh, yeah.
Why do you think he didn't do it on his own?
Well, because it says that the devil God allowed Satan to let the serpent tempt her. And I believe I can find that. I think I saw it here.
Well, you know, that's like Job. God allowed the devil to tempt Job. He said, just don't hurt him, kill him. So, God uses the devil,
I don't.
trying to
believe
keep
the
us to stay on the straight and narrow.
serpent- Let me read that again.
Well, I think we find in the Bible that Christ was really the only one that never gave in to temptation.
Right.
And he was tempted in some of the worst ways possible. So we know with Christ's help, we can overcome temptation.
Yeah, in Matthew, when he was in the wilderness, he was tempted in every way that we're tempted today, but he didn't fall for it.
And he was tempted in the exact same way, lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, and the
In the
pride of life.
life.
Christ was tempted the same way, we're tempted the same way.
Yep.
There's nothing new here, that's the way it is.
Okay, I found it actually in Genesis 3:1, what the commentary is saying here is that the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden. And the first thought of this guy in this commentary is that as Satan can change himself into an angel of light, we know that, still. And so did he abuse the wisdom of the serpent to deceive man. God allowed Satan to make the serpent his instrument and to speak through him.
Okay.
The lust of the eye.
There's three things that
Well, she thought it was good for food.
good for food.
Pretty.
She thought it was good for knowledge too, didn't she?
Yep. Make one wise.
Wise.
Yep. And also, I say it was a delight to the eyes. It was too good to look at.
That's what I meant when I said pretty.
You didn't say it, but I bet it smelled awful good.
Turn over to 1 John chapter 2. First John chapter 2, verse 16. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and thy vain glory of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. So that was true with Adam and Eve, and that's true with us today. This world looks to the material things to make me look better, to make me feel good, to get me what I want. But that's not that didn't come from God, that come from the devil. Whom did she tempt to sin with her? Adam, which we looked at in Genesis 3 and 6. What was her defense when she was reproached?
The serpent deceived me.
Do what?
The serpent deceived me.
Okay.
I was tricked.
Look at Genesis 3 and 13. And Jehovah God said unto the woman, What is this thou hast done? And the woman said, The serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. He tricked me into looking at this and saying it was good. What was Eve's punishment?
They had to have the garden.
Is that only Eve's punishment? No, that even applies today. The serpent, pain in conception and birth of children. And there's one that we don't think about, was that the husband would rule over her. If you read Genesis 3:14 through 16, you'll see all of that in there. And then it also goes on, it talks about the serpent crawling on the ground And in this case, it was talking about the serpent as being the devil, because he said, you would bruise the son's heel, talking about Christ, but he would crush your head, And so that all comes into the point of Eve sinning.
You know, Paul, I like it too. We're always looking for somebody to blame.
Yeah.
It's his fault or her fault. And we know it's our own fault, but we don't want to admit it. And I kind of think this is the situation they were in too. We don't like to admit that.
Yeah.
Look what Paul says, look what the Genesis says in verse 12. It says, this is God asking him, why did you do that? And the man said, the woman who thou gavest unto me. So he's basically blaming God for his sin. Saying, you gave me the woman, it's your fault. Doesn't take responsibility. He doesn't even blame the woman. God who gave it to me.
Yeah. Well, we've only got a few minutes left. Let's look at these next. How is the woman to be saved? You go over to 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 13 through 15. It talks about through childbirth, if they continue in faith and love, and are sanctified with sobriety. Who were Eve's first two sons? Cain and Abel. Abel was a keeper of sheep. Cain was a farmer. They offered a sacrifice to God. And Cain's sacrifice was not acceptable to God. And he killed Abel. And Cain was cursed to wander and be a fugitive for the rest of his life. Now, here's some questions for discussion. Just think about them. Did Eve's own lack of a childhood affect her training of her sons? I don't think so. I mean, they both grew up to do what they wanted to make of their lives. Can a woman have much influence on her husband's moral life?
Yes.
And how do you do that? How do you have influence on your husband's moral life?
Well, if you put them down in public, or you put them down in church, that's not going to help him build his self-esteem or build it up any.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, do you think he knew who Satan was?
Well, she called him the serpent, so I'm sure somewhere in the back of her mind she knew it had to be something evil, because up until that time everything in the garden was good.
Right. I don't know if she knew about that.
What is woman's real purpose in life and place in society? That's a good one. So women, what is the purpose of your life and place in society? Come on, women.
Dear God, keep his commandments, but
Okay.
I think she's here to guide her husband and tell him what to do.
Well, it is definitely different in today's times than it was back in the beginning of time, because she was to help her husband in their life, to raise the children, to be known for her work ethic. Today, in our culture today, that's not the same. Most women, well, we've got to get out of the house and get a job. Rusty?
If you look at popular culture, watch stuff that's going on, they cannot even define what he wants to be.
Yeah.
ones that are on that.
Speak up, Rusty.
They can't even find what they are.
So,
Woman can't define what they are.
How are they gonna find what the role is? They can't tell us what it is.
Nick?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I'll be real quick. It says in verse 16, your desires will be contrary to your husband. So now we have it reversed, that she wants to rule over him.
Right. Yep. And is that following God's law? No, it's not. Thank you for your comments. If you want to look ahead, next week we're going to look at Sarah.